Are really? Thank you very much. Do you know anyone who owns shepherd dogs? Hey, I hear a dog barking, do you own a dog? At that moment, Zuo Yu was teasing Curly Hair, provoking a series of barks from him that Suho heard. I own one, but it's not a shepherd dog. No worries, bring it along the next time you come to Muzhou. We can let it try out some sheep herding training. Suho had not hidden the fact that he had bought the farm from Feng Zhao. He had only mentioned that, although the farm's land was huge, the soil was no longer suitable for planting anything. Muzhou's farm owners were not as carefree as people thought they were. They paid attention to the weather, agriculture, farming soil improvements, and crops. All of that was knowledge they needed to know, and it was stuff that they personally paid attention to. However, there would always be lazy farmer owners who were ignorant and let their arable soil go to waste after a time. The plot of land that Suho had bought was just like that. The images and information he had received were totally different from what he'd seen personally. The land had already wasted and he had been tricked. If he wanted to plant new stuff, he would need to hire a professional to make amendments. As for the ones who had tricked Suho, they had played on the urgency of Suho's need to find a farm. All he needed was a little push to fall for it. It was rather evident that the ones who had tricked Suho knew him very well. Just by using one's brains a little, it was easy to guess who they actually were. However, Feng Zhao had no interest in the trivial matters of the Su family. Once he attended to the matters at hand, Feng Zhao was going to submit another application to go overseas again. Collecting materials again. Duan Qianji felt her head aching. Nope. This time it is to expand my professional service, Feng Zhao said. Duan Qianji felt it was funny. Expand his professional service. Are you able to garner support or get an advertisement? Muzhou advertisements were still a tough ask even if one was famous. Polar Light's development plans within the continent had already been arranged. There were two paths that could be taken. One was if Polar Light was selected for the endorsement deal, the other was if he did not get selected. Whichever path it followed, Polar Light was Sci-Leveler Wing's most promising virtual idol. Duan Qianji had no plans to let it go to waste. Feng Zhao had given Polar Light such a gorgeous debut. If they let this trump card get ruined, Sci-Leveler Wing Media did not deserve to be among the three big entertainment companies of Yanzhou. Fiery Bird's eventual spokesperson would be publicly announced in May. During this period, Sci-Leveler Wing Media would release a war movie in which Polar Light would have a role. Therefore, the entire virtual projects department except the producer, Feng Zhao, was busy as usual. Although his original job was a composer, Sci-Leveler Wing did not need him to be in charge of every film that they made. Otherwise, why did Sci-Leveler Wing have so many other composers on their payroll? Was Flying Pegasus a bunch of useless good-for-nothings? Thus, now that Feng Zhao had accomplished all his work at hand and was idle, and since Suho had a situation over there, Feng Zhao decided to go over for a bit. This time around it was different. Other than Feng Zhao and Zuo Yu, the flying transport had one more dog. Perhaps it was his first time on board a flying transport, as Curly Hair did not seem at ease and was pacing around impatiently, finally deciding to lie beside Feng Zhao's legs. Looking at the dog beside Feng Zhao's legs, Zuo Yu said, "Boss, is it appropriate to bring this dog over? The dogs at Muzhou are generally larger, just like that black dog we saw at Shanmu Farm, wasn't it big? Actually, that was still a puppy. As for this dog, compared with the professional shepherd dogs at the farms, it is little more than a toy. Wouldn't it get bullied over there? And if you consider the builds of the sheep, and looking at this dog, it might even be scared of the sheep." Feng Zhao, who was reading a history book, said, "Curly Hair has a high IQ. He learns fast too. When the time comes for him to learn herding with those professional sheepdogs, even if he can't herd, learning more is always beneficial." Following the coordinates the Suho had given, Zuo Yu flew the transport to a farm situated in the eastern part of Muzhou. It was different from all the other farms that were full of vitality as they flew past. This farm seemed desolate and nothing was going on. Even the grass on the pastures was sparse. A few lifeless dogs were lying at the side yawning, too lazy to even react as they saw a flying transport approaching. Suho was already waiting there with an embarrassed smile on his face. "Brother Zhao, you have arrived?" Suho rushed forward. "Call me Master Zhao," Feng Zhao told him. "Yes, Master Zhao." Suho did not care what Feng Zhao wanted himself to be called. Now, Feng Zhao was a rich man, and it was hard to find a person who could help. Furthermore, when Suho had looked up information on Feng Zhao, Suho had come to admire him. He had heard that, in the past, they would call rich men something master. There were people who still used the term in Muzhou, so Suho did not find anything wrong with addressing him that way. "First, tell me the current situation. The honest truth, do not conceal anything. You have only one chance. Feng Zhao looked at Suho. He would not ask how Suho had gotten tricked first. The kid had pride, and harping on that matter would be met with a little resistance. One would learn from his own mistakes. As long as he was not an idiot, he would gain something. Facing Feng Zhao's unreadable expression and stare, Suho felt all the skin on his body tightening up. As if it was his grandfather staring at him before he received a scolding. Suho shrunk back and lost all trace of his normal arrogant self, yet he also let out a sigh of relief. He had thought that Feng Zhao would deride him for getting conned, but he had not expected that Feng Zhao would not mention it at all after arriving. Looking around at the predicament he was in, Suho recounted the entire matter honestly. Oh, it was like this. Among Suho's attendants were some that knew how to manage a farm. Suho then recounted what had been told to him to Feng Zhao. After the farm was bought, they were unable to find the sellers to return it. A lawsuit was also impossible. Since he had already bought it, rather than spending more time to trace down the conmen, why not settle the situation before them and come up with a solution to bring the dead farm back to life? Bringing it back to life was not that hard, the only difficulty was the funding. Was cash required to fix the soil? Was cash required to purchase seeds and livestock? Was cash required to build large sheds and pens? Was money required to hire workers and experts? If the soil was not good, how about fixing up the irrigation system first? An irrigation system would cost quite a bit too. Suho's voice became softer and softer. Even he felt embarrassed to continue talking about the matter. He was not familiar with managing a farm and had not studied much agriculture and farming. The amount of help he needed was by no means small. Most importantly, he needed to assemble a sheep herding team. His motive for purchasing the farm was to buy out a shepherd dog team as well as their accumulated points and take part in the Eastern Region sheep herding competition. Now, if he were to shift his attention to the farm, wouldn't the order be reversed? So your most pressing issue is to find dogs and a trainer? Feng Zhao asked. That's right. The next round of competition is in a week's time. If we miss it, our ranking will drop even more, Suho replied. What plans do you have? I was thinking of getting a few dogs that can herd, borrowing is fine too. A lot of participating dogs in the sheep herding competition are borrowed too. As long as they can coordinate, it will be fine. Oh, and a training field. I'm afraid that this place is current unusable. Suho felt an aching in his heart when he thought about the farm that was totally empty. All that money in exchange for a lifeless farm, that were firstly without sheep, secondly without dogs, and thirdly without a pasture. Totally nothing at all. Suho had originally wanted to find people he knew for help, but after some thinking, he was afraid of getting conned once more. Brother Zhao. Master Zhao, do you know any farm owners who own dogs, sheep, and a pasture? Suho asked cautiously. Dogs, sheep, and a pasture. Feng Zhao had just thought of a person. Wait a moment, let me contact someone, Feng Zhao replied. Sure. Hearing things turning for the better, Suho was suddenly full of vigor. Nobody else came to Feng Zhao's mind but Wu Yi, the owner of Shanmu Farm, who they had encountered on their first visit to Muzhou. Feng Zhao contacted Wu Yi and asked him whether he was interested in taking part in a sheep herding competition and working together. Feng Zhao selectively mentioned the matter regarding Suho to Wu Yi. Even if Feng Zhao had not said anything, news traveled fast, and Wu Yi had some idea of what had happened. Choosing what to make of it was up to Wu Yi himself. This really lifted Wu Yi's spirits. The competition between the younger generation of the Su family such as Suho did not threaten him here, so a partnership of mutual interest was enticing. Wu Yi's farm in the eastern region was not considered large, but he was not a man without ambition. It was just that there was a limit to his funding and he had not assembled a sheep herding team before and could only support his relatives who were capable enough and hoped that it would bring him some benefits. However, now, he felt that these benefits were not able to satisfy him. Feng Zhao's proposal excited Wu Yi. Even if he was not able to gain much benefits, his own farm shepherd dogs would gain a chance at free training. The procedures and expenses would also be handled by others. This was the best possible scenario he could have. Wu Yi gave his affirmation. He was thinking, if his own dogs from his farm performed well at the sheep herding competition, he would sign up for next year's competition. Even if he did not get a good position, appearing would also raise up his farm's name in the eastern region, which was still a good thing. Wu Yi's decision came as no surprise to Feng Zhao. Most Muzhou farm owners were not stupid, especially those from bigger or medium-sized farms. They were not farm owners but businessmen. They were not the happy-go-lucky good-for-nothing people that the external world perceived them to be. Although Wu Yi was a person who had no lack of ambition, he was still considered an upright person. Under the current circumstances, cooperating with him was the choice that was the fastest and most beneficial for both. After confirming the time, Feng Zhao brought Suho to Shanmu Farm. Suho did not look at anything else but the land. The farm that he had bought was bigger than Shanmu Farm but totally did not have the liveliness of Shanmu Farm. Ha 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 ha, we meet again. Wu Yi had been waiting at the garage. When he saw the transport land, he went over to exchange greetings, and he introduced himself warmly. He might not have thought highly of Suho, but he did think highly of Feng Zhao. I heard that Zishan Farm was bought by someone, but I didn't expect it to be you, Wu Yi said. Zishan Farm was located at the western side of the East District. There were not many reputable farms there and the facilities were not very good. On normal days, there was not much sense of belonging. It was only because a sheep herding team from that area had caught the attention of everyone. But the information on the internet was very different from the truth. Only those that had personally been there knew the actual situation. Wu Yi had also only heard about it in private from a friend who liked to investigate. However, the information online was inconsistent with reality. This sort of situation was rarely seen, so even if they knew about it, no one would mention it. They only paid attention to the sheep herding competition. Never had they expected that it was Suho who had bought the farm. Given Wu Yi's decades of experience, even without asking, he could tell that there had been a trap in Boliveld and Suho had fallen into it. As for why Feng Zhao had entered the mix, Wu Yi was not sure. However, as long as he was able to benefit from it, Wu Yi was willing to play dumb. The grass on this field grows really well. Totally unlike the farm that I bought. It hasn't even revegetated yet. Even though Suho did not know much about farming, comparing the farm he had just bought to the one before him, the difference was clear as day. If he could not even see that, he would be blind. Over here, our field revegetated early. Wu Yi did not ask why the grass on Suho's farm had not regrown yet, he just led Feng Zhao and Suho's party to the field where the sheep were at. Hey! Feng Zhao, is this the little fellow that you own? Wu Yi eyed the curly-haired dog that was following Feng Zhao's legs closely. Yeah. This dog looks quite smart. In a bit, my farm's bingo will do some demonstrations. Let's see how much it can learn. When Wu Yi spoke, he seemed rather pleased. The bingo he spoke of was the shepherd dog on his farm with the best temperament to be a lead dog. Taking Wu Yi's car, in no time, the party arrived at where the flock of sheep were at. Wu Yi's farm had over 300 sheep and only 7 shepherd dogs, but not every shepherd dog was capable of carrying out instructions precisely. There were workers to tend to the livestock as well as mechanical dogs. The mechanical dogs that farm owners used were not at all like dogs, the shape was totally different. They were invented to provide assistance for herding livestock, so people coined them mechanical dogs. Wu Yi and the other farm owners could control these mechanical dogs from their homes and observe the situations at the pastures. The car stopped on a plot of higher ground as they stood there watching the sheep being herded. At this current period, pastures have to be changed frequently, so we cannot just leave them in one field. Today, we might let the sheep graze here, tomorrow, we will bring them somewhere else, Wu Yi told Feng Zhao and Suho. From what he saw, one was an amateur from a foreign continent and the other one was an ignorant young master of the Su family. As an experienced party, he had to show off a bit of his professional knowledge. In this season, we cannot let the herd walk too quickly. There is a need to control their speed, to obstruct the stronger sheep and wait for the weaker ones. Sometimes I will use this sort of job to train the shepherd dogs to complete it. As he said this, Wu Yi shouted in that direction, bingo. Among the few dogs that were herding the sheep, a large dog with brown spots sprinted over. It had a rugged body, its fur was glistening brightly, and it was extremely quick-witted. Seeing Feng Zhao and the rest of the party, it did not bark or show any intention to attack. It just looked at Wu Yi, and only after Wu Yi made a hand sign did it run over to his side. Feng Zhao, what does your dog normally do? Can it understand simple oral commands? Wu Yi asked. Simple oral commands are fine. Feng Zhao had not deliberately trained curly hair, but probably because it had interacted with the people in the department for quite some time, it could understand simple words. It should probably know fetch and follow. What about directions? Left, right. Never mind, how about we see whether it can herd sheep first? Wu Yi brought Feng Zhao and the rest close to the flock. Suho watched the dogs surrounding the flock curiously. Some of them let out low warning growls and showed an intention to attack. It was only when Wu Yi made a hand sign that they stood down, wagging their tails as they headed to Wu Yi. Giving each a reward, he instructed them to continue standing guard. Wu Yi then pointed at some stray sheep a short distance away from the flock. Go herd those sheep that have wandered too far away from the flock, Bingo. In the next moment, Bingo rushed out. The sheep that had strayed off were driven and ran back toward the herd. As for Bingo, he slowed to a walk upon nearing the flock and turned back. See, it is just like that. Although it might look simple, training takes time, and most of my shepherd dogs have been trained since they were young. Matured dogs whose qualities have been determined already are not suitable. Feng Zhao, your dog is not suitable for herding sheep, but a little training might be beneficial, and it might learn a thing or two. Look, there is still another sheep in front. Why don't you let small curly hair try it out, Wu Yi said. Curly hair, go try it out. This is not how you train a dog. Wu Yi saw Feng Zhao standing there not moving and looked a little helpless. He thought to himself. A foreigner is just a foreigner. If training dogs was really that easy and they did exactly as you said, I would already have brought my farm's dogs to take part in a competition. Of course, Feng Zhao knew that really training a dog was not like this, but he had found out early on that curly hair's capacity for leaning was very impressive. Furthermore, he had gradually started to understand a lot of words. Thus, he was just trying it out by saying this. Just as Feng Zhao finished his sentence, Curly Hair left and scampered over to the lone sheep. Curly Hair was not as big as Bingo. When compared to the sheep, it was even smaller. The hooves of a sheep could crush him easily. As Zuo Yu had expected, the sheep was not bothered as Curly Hair walked toward it, unhurriedly chewing on the grass. At most, it lazily raised an eye to look as Curly Hair neared it but showed no sign of a reaction. The curly-haired dog was at a loss and turned back, not knowing what to do. Still no good. This dog has no killing intent. Wu Yi sighed. When most shepherd dogs cannot make a sheep move, they bark or threaten to bite. Your dog is too small. It probably does not dare to do so. However, it is normal for an untrained dog to do this. How about I get somebody to bring a small sheep over and let it build up a little courage? Carnivores have an innate knack for hunting. Deep down, it definitely has the instinct to do so. With a little training it will learn. Looking over at Curly Hair, he realized that it was observing the few shepherd dogs, probably trying to imitate them. There is no rush, wait a moment. A minute passed, then 2 minutes. Wu Yi tore off a bit of straw and placed it in his mouth while chewing the end. This was his habit when he was bored. I wonder whether we should. Wu Yi had not finished what he was saying when he saw the curly-haired dog lower its head and face the sheep in an attacking position. The originally unbothered sheep that was chewing on the grass stopped in its tracks. Suddenly, with a thud, the sheep took off as if it had stepped on a spring. Behind it, the curly-haired dog chased after it closely. Suhu's gaping mouth could swallow an egg whole. So sheep can run that fast. The straw in Wu Yi's mouth fell. This is my first time seeing it too. The sheep seemed like it was running for its life and rushed straight into the flock of sheep. The originally peaceful flock that had been grazing became restless. As for the curly-haired dog, it stopped as it neared the flock. The restless flock took a while before calming down. Wu Yi turned towards Feng Zhao. That dog, is at part wolf. Otherwise, why had that sheep run as if its life was in danger? Zuo Yu asked, what do you think? I think that it is rather suitable to herd sheep. He then told Zuo Yu, head to the transport and bring over my equipment case. Feng Zhao had prepared an equipment case before leaving for Mazao this time. Zuo Yu had seen it and heard that in it were tools for gathering materials. At least a minimum of 6 shepherd dogs were required to participate in the competition. Therefore, according to Wu Yi, they were going to pick 6 and add Curly Hair in for a total team strength of 7. As an old, experienced farm owner, he personally took charge of training. Although there was less than a week till the next round, with additional practice, they should be able to get it together. Feng Zhao let Curly Hair go over before turning to Suho beside him. What are you standing around for? Go over and learn. Feng Zhao told Suho, who seemed like he was watching an interesting scene. Ah. Suho was at a loss. I have to learn herding too. When the time comes, is it you or Wu Yi who is going to be standing at the instructor's position? Feng Zhao asked. Suho was silent. Most of the time, the instructor's position at the sheep herding competition was where the respective farm owner or their successor stood. There would be recording and broadcasting of the instructor's positions during the competition. Standing there was a mark. Feng Zhao's question was to ask if Suho was going to stand there proudly and publicize himself when the time came, or if was he going to give the chance up to Wu Yi. Suho was temporarily at a loss. Looking at the flock of sheep, he stammered, but there are no more extra cars. If there are no cars, you still have your legs. Running. Suho wanted to object, but under the stern gaze of Feng Zhao, he shuffled over in that direction. In fact, Suho wanted to enjoy standing on the instructor's position at the sheep herding competition, just that standing there required too much investment. He was not familiar with any of Shanmu Farm's dogs. Would they listen to his commands? If the shepherd dog team was capable of acting independently herding sheep, Suho would not mind just standing there as a decoration. But now, this was a newly formed team, and it was impossible for them to reach that standard. Sigh. Just try it out. Suho ran over to where the flock of sheep were and observed Wu Yi's hand gestures and commands when training the dogs. Wu Yi also understood Suho's intentions and explained to Suho as he was training the dogs as well as allowing the dogs to have more interactions with him. Suho had brought along 3 people. His attendants saw to his dietary and personal needs and doubled up as bodyguards. However, Feng Zhao did not let the 3 bodyguards help Suho. All he allowed them to do was ensure Suho's safety and not worry about the rest. Suho also agreed. Therefore, the 3 bodyguards stood some way off, watching the little fatty Su running around with the dogs and sheep. Feng Zhao noticed that, at the start, Curly Hair did not blend in well with the team and was not familiar with many commands. However, after an hour, his mistakes were much fewer, and he could correctly carry out Wu Yi's instructions to herd the sheep. Although it was not a very good blend, they managed to herd the sheep with some difficulty. Feng Zhao felt that sheep herding opened a new world for Curly Hair. This dog was very strange. It could learn very quickly, but up to now, it had never shown any signs of menace or intention of attacking the people around it. Although it would have its own thoughts, it never hid them. It was just a dog that was as straightforward as one could get. After the apocalypse, many new things appeared. Was this dog one of them? Feng Zhao thought to himself. Boss, I brought your equipment case. Zuo Yu placed the case he'd taken from the flying transport at Feng Zhao's side and looked over at the field. Oh. Little Curly Hair seems to be doing quite well. However, he looks like he still doesn't fit in. Zuo Yu had no experience at sheep herding, but he could still see that Curly Hair was not fitting in well. The dogs of Shanmu Farm were excluding Curly Hair. Many times, when they were running according to Wu Yi's instructions, they would steal Curly Hair's spot. Soon, Feng Zhao replied. Zuo Yu did not understand what Feng Zhao meant by that, but in no time at all, he realized that the shepherd dogs were having a conflict. When Curly Hair was running, he was obstructed by Bingo and his position was stolen. This time, Curly Hair was angry, and his low growls were like a declaration of war. Bingo also did not continue to run forward. He turned around and faced off with Curly Hair. The 2 dogs were barking at each other. A distance of about 1 meter separated them. Both their bodies were taut, bearing teeth and claws, making low threatening growls. Suho wanted to go over but was stopped by Wu Yi. A pasture only has 1 lead dog. That is the rule. From what Wu Yi saw, this pasture was Bingo's domain. Now that the small Curly Hair had joined, if it had taken up a subservient stance, all would have been well. However, that little fellow was rather passionate and had no intention to back down, instead provoking the original lead dog. Wu Yi did not stop them. A real battle between 2 dogs might result in accidental injury to people. He controlled the mechanical dogs to fly over and stand by to prevent any bloodshed. However, what surprised Wu Yi was that, where the 2 dogs were facing off, Bingo's growls were gradually getting softer. His erect ears had also drooped. Wu Yi knew then that Bingo was terrified. Terrified. It was actually terrified of a dog half its size. Even if body sizes were not compared, if another dog threatened its position on its own turf, how could he get terrified that fast? Wu Yi glanced over at Feng Zhao and received a hand gesture of continue from him. For the time being, they were not going to look into what caused the incident to happen. They just continued training as per usual. However, Bingo no longer tried to snatch positions this time, which made Wu Yi feel depressed. The original plan to let Bingo be the lead dog had been shattered, and adjustments would have to be made. Control the area. Good, very good. Maintain distance. Positions, pay attention to the positions. Bingo. Faster, what are you afraid of? Run forward faster. Wu Yi directed them a while before letting Suho try. No hand gestures, just oral commands. Letting his employees in charge of herding watch over, Wu Yi walked over to Feng Zhao and downed half a glass of water. His face was still gloomy. Feng Zhao, that dog, did you really pick him up from some street in the city? Are you sure you did not pick it up from some laboratory or some alien planet? You watch too much television, Feng Zhao replied. As shepherd dogs were very smart and well known in Mazao, there were many dog-related films. The virtual idols that were most popular in Mazao were not humans but dogs. However, other than the scenarios he saw on film, Wu Yi could not think of any other explanation. According to logic, Feng Zhao's curly hair was not a purebred descendant of a service dog, and the whole world knew that the IQ of Muzhou dogs were the highest in all the 12 continents. Dogs that could herd were not stupid, but now, Bingo was losing out to a small curly-haired dog whose origins and lineage were not even known. Comparing IQ and vigor, it had lost. Wu Yi could not understand at all. Sitting on the grass and chewing on a strand of straw, he felt a little heartache. His outlook on life had been changed. If it really continues like this, the lead dog. Would it be that little curly-haired dog? When the time comes for the competition, the audience wouldn't mock them, would they? No way. Wu Yi's shrewd mind had begun working. If they do not think highly, that would be less people betting, and the payout odds would be very high. As the sheep herding competition progressed, the rules for the rewards would change too. As Wu Yi watched his 6 dogs nearby herding sheep alongside that curly-haired dog, his eyes started to shine with glee. Midway through a break, Suho came over to discuss something with Feng Zhao. He wanted the dogs to listen to his instructions at the next competition. For that, he would need the selected dogs to approve of him. Curly hair was not an issue, but the other 6 dogs saw Wu Yi as their master. Unless Wu Yi renounced them, they would not take anyone else for a second master. Wu Yi said to make them approve of me in the shortest time, other than interacting with them when herding, I would need to eat and sleep with them to increase my time spent together. From what I understand, I have to treat myself as a dog, Suho said. What about your own decision? Feng Zhao asked. Suho scratched his head. I think that if that can help us win, it is not that big of a deal. Feng Zhao laughed and did not continue the topic. Instead he said, I heard that if you get in the top 8 of the Eastern region, there is a 5-minute dedicated advertisement segment. Yes. When Feng Zhao mentioned this, Suho then remembered, for normal sheep herding competitions, although there was an introduction for each farm, the time frame for each was not much, just a few brief lines on each farm before they introduced the dogs' accomplishments. But at the Eastern Region Finals, where the top 8 were cut down to the top 4, when they decided the qualifications, there would be an opportunity to exhibit themselves. And that period was when everyone in Muzhou would be paying attention. If we do get that chance, I will make sure to make myself even more handsome for the shoot. Suho had started thinking of how cool and dazzling his image would be at the finals. Thinking of this, he felt inspired. Master Zhao, for the publicity film, would you personally craft the background music? Of course. Ha 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 ha. Suho laughed excitedly and ran toward the flock of sheep. He felt that, in a while, he would be able to ride dogs into battle. Wu Yi walked over and suspiciously asked, what's up with that little fellow? Previously, he had seen the little master looking listless, but now it seemed he was all perked up. And what are you doing over here again? Seeing what Feng Zhao was doing, Wu Yi forgot about his previous question. He saw Feng Zhao attaching a fingernail-sized object to the curly-haired dog's head. A sound recorder, for collecting material. After attaching the equipment, he patted curly hair. Go on. Is straw nice to eat? Feng Zhao asked upon seeing Wu Yi chewing on yet another stalk. Wu Yi had a profound look on his face. You wouldn't understand. The 4 seasons are contained inside a stalk of straw. Walking over to Feng Zhao's side, Wu Yi listened to the sounds of the earpiece. It was all the sound of wind. This should be the sounds from the curly-haired dog's recorder. However, this was a very common sound. Why would Feng Zhao need it? Did he need to collect this sort of material? Totally not understanding, Wu Yi curiously asked, so composers like you have an interest in common sounds like this? Feng Zhao laughed and shook his head. You wouldn't understand. The world is contained within sounds. Wu Yi, speechless, first time meeting someone who can pretend better than me. Shepherd dogs did not have easy jobs. Every day, they would run at least 30 kilometers. If they needed to consistently change pastures, the distance was even greater. For arduous tasks, sometimes they might even cover 100 kilometers in a single day. However, there was no way Suho could compare with the professional shepherd dogs. Without a car, and given his weaker constitution, using just his 2 legs would be an impossible ask. Luckily he was only playing the role of an instructor. There was no need to frequently run with the dogs. However, just slowly following them and shouting commands non-stop was enough to tire Suho till he was on the verge of collapsing. When they were heading back from the pasture, Suho rode the car back. He was too tired to run anymore. At dinner, Suho ate with the dogs. That did not mean that he ate dog food, but rather, after feeding the dogs, Suho would have his own food beside them. When it came to sleeping, Suho slept in the kennel. However, the place where the dog slept on the farm had rather decent living conditions. Not as good as Suho's own home, but it was better than some of the living quarters of normal employees. With Suho sleeping in the kennel, his 3 bodyguards could not wander off too far. They had to stay nearby and monitor the area where young Master Su was. During the day, Suho was dog-tired. At night, he could just lie down in the kennel and fall asleep straight away. However, there was a strange laughter coming from the kennel. Hee hee. Hi-yay. Ha 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 ha. The 3 bodyguards cautiously headed over to check it out. They realized it was their young master having a dream. It was probably a good dream as he kept laughing. The dogs in the kennel had looks of irritation. Bingo let out a dissatisfied whimper before changing positions and continuing to sleep. The shepherd dogs were tired out and left the guarding of the farm at night to Chubby Black and a few other specially trained guard dogs. The Suho was pushed by the paw of a nearby dog. He smacked his lips a few times, turned his body the other way, and continued sleeping. In no time at all, the intermittent laughter came back. Seeing the situation, the 3 bodyguard felt a little helpless. They cared for their young master dearly, but seeing the situation, they had no idea what to feel. Their young master seemed rather comfortable just sleeping in the kennel. Unlike Suho and the rest who slept early, Feng Zhao still went running at night. As his bodyguard, Zuo Yu also followed, although he had no idea why his artist boss was running in the pitch-black farm at night. Curly Hair had joined them and was running beside Feng Zhao's feet. The farm was huge. Feng Zhao ran 2 rounds from the cultivated farmlands to the pastures before heading back. It's really quiet, Feng Zhao said. Zuo Yu thought to himself, what nonsense is he saying? Ma Zhao is like this. There are few people and the farms are big. Everywhere is just fields and pastures, Zuo Yu said. Feng Zhao laughed but did not bother explaining. Back during the end of days, nights had not been like this. As they were running back to the residence Wu Yi had prepared for them, Feng Zhao realized that, although the farm was very quiet, there were many eyes behind them. The whole farm was being monitored. Every night, there were people in the monitor room, prepared to investigate any unusual happenings. The dogs of the farm also doubled as their early warning system. Even if their eyes were closed, their ears were always listening for any suspicious sounds. This farm was run well. Feng Zhao knew that, even if they had not collaborated this time, Wu Yi would still have been able to expand his farm. All he needed was more time. When they returned back, Feng Zhao did not head out anymore. Zuo Yu also went into his own room. If his boss did not head out, he could also rest a little. Midway through a yawn, Zuo Yu suddenly halted as he remembered something. No wonder he kept feeling something was amiss. After they had returned back from running, Feng Zhao surprisingly had not been panting as he had expected. How was that possible? According to the information on Feng Zhao's file, he was supposed to be the sort that lacked physical training and was an artist that only knew how to use his brains to make money. But after running such a distance, why had he still seemed so relaxed? Could it be that it was as the people in the virtual projects department had said, that Feng Zhao spent a lot of time training himself every day? But even if it was normal training, it was still not possible to reach this sort of level. Unless Feng Zhao's training had increasing intensity. But what would an artistic worker need such a high degree of training for? Zuo Yu realized that he understood Feng Zhao less and less. Shaking his head, he took 2 steps then stopped. He remembered that the curly-haired dog at Feng Zhao's feet had not panted either. During the day, it had sheep herding training, and at night, it still kept up with Feng Zhao for the run. To think that it was not even panting. If it were another dog, it would probably have laid down and gasped for air after returning. Zuo Yu was even more depressed. Even that dog made no sense. The next day, Suho emerged from the kennel in high spirits and ran over to find Feng Zhao. Yesterday, he had run the entire day, but at night, after spraying medicine, it was as if his muscles were not sore at all. Instead, after his nice dream last night, he'd woken up smiling. I heard that young Master Su had a good dream last night. What did you dream about? Wu Yi asked when he saw Suho. I dreamed that. Dreamed that. Sigh, I already can't remember, but it was a good dream. Hee hee, Master Zhao. Suho shouted when he saw Feng Zhao coming. The application for the farm's name was successful. We will have a new name for the next competition. Suho wanted to change the name after he had bought Zishan Farm. After all, with a new owner, there was no need to use the previous name. Even if the farm had nothing, it still was his own property. A name change would make him feel more at ease. However, after thinking of quite a number of names, Suho could not decide on one. After that, Feng Zhao had said, if you don't like Zishan, how about Dongshan, it means to make a comeback? Hence, Suho had gone and applied for the change of name and received news that it had been approved early this morning. From today onward, their farm was no longer Zishan Farm but Dongshan Farm. Although he was unclear of what he had dreamt about last night, Suho remembered it having something to do with the sheep herding competition. As Feng Zhao had said, he was eagerly anticipating entering the Eastern Finals. When that happened, everyone watching the competition would know Suho's name. With the success of the name application, Suho was in a good mood, and he began putting an added effort to learning herding. For the following few days, Suho followed the flock of sheep every day, giving instructions to the 7 shepherd dogs on his team. Wu Yi picked out 100 sheep for training from his own livestock. The sheep were selected by their breed and characteristics to be similar to the sheep used in the sheep herding competition. These sheep were the most commonly seen sheep in Muzhou. Suho's 3 bodyguards lamented every day. At the start, Suho had been at a loss all the time, but now, he had both form and shape. At the start, he'd taken half a day to think of commands to issue, but now, when he saw the changes in the flock, he could immediately come up with hand gestures. In just a week, the young master had lost weight. Wu Yi imparted some sheep herding tactics every day, but he no longer concealed anything. After all, they had chosen to cooperate, and he had chosen to bet on Dongshan Farm. He considered it an all-in gamble, so if he kept anything to himself, it would not benefit anyone at all. But what made the 3 bodyguards puzzled was the composer from Yanzhou, Feng Zhao. What was he up to every day? In the day, Feng Zhao just sat there with his earpiece, fiddling with some music software. At night, he took his dog out for runs. When Suho was herding sheep, Feng Zhao would even place some sort of recording equipment on the sheep, dogs, and even on Suho's body. Any instrument to be placed by Feng Zhao had to go through a stringent inspection by the 3 bodyguards. The inspection found that the equipment was indeed a sound recorder and, furthermore, it was to be placed closest to the ear. The sounds it recorded were sounds that the ear tended to not hear. This made them even more bewildered. Eavesdropping. What was there to eavesdrop on? And so much effort just to do so. Collecting materials. What sorry of materials did this collect? They had all heard the sounds from the recordings. It was just a bunch of sounds all mashed together, there was nothing much to hear. Sometimes they could hear the wind, but the sound of wind was not that special either. As for the symbols Feng Zhao wrote down in his notebook, it was rumored to be a musical score, but no one could understand it. Indeed, the world of an artist was different from that of a normal human. In the blink of an eye, the day of the competition arrived. In this round, other than their Dongshan farm, there were 7 other teams from the eastern region. In total, there were 8 teams. Boss, what are you betting on this time? Top 5 again? Zuo Yu asked. No. Wu Yi had said that, in Muzhou, most of the people that could correctly guess the top 5 were from the Su family. Feng Zhao guessing all correctly once could be down to pure luck. But out of 10 times, hitting predictions correctly 3 times would attract unwanted attention. If the frequency of correct predictions increased, it would attract more attention. Feng Zhao currently did not want any trouble. Furthermore, he was not short of cash, so there was no need to take such a risk. After all, making less guesses did not mean not being able to win big. Feng Zhao looked at the odds for the payouts. Perhaps there were a number of teams of a similar standard, so the payouts were slightly higher. Guessing first place correctly would give a 3-fold bonus. The places that followed were the same, higher than the previous time. This time, there are no slight favorites or underdogs. Guessing the top 5 is hard, Feng Zhao said. Zuo Yu looked at Feng Zhao. He did not know if Feng Zhao really could not guess or if he did not want to. Pausing a while, he asked, so how do you intend to buy? You don't have to overthink. As long as we are taking part in the competition, wagering on ourselves will be good enough, Feng Zhao replied. Zuo Yu understood and nodded his head. Just as Wu Yi had done so to support his cousin, whether it looked good or not, he could always wager some and have a side bet in the shadows. Zuo Yu wanted to know if Feng Zhao had any secret side bets but could not ask him so publicly. So he walked over and whispered, Boss, how much did you place on us this time around? All the winnings from our previous trip to Muzhou, Feng Zhao replied. Zuo Yu was startled. Are you serious? When am I ever not serious? Inside the viewing gallery, staffers from Shanmu Farm were massaging their dogs. Feng Zhao and Wu Yi hung out in the official viewing gallery. The competition venue was too big. They could never take in the entirety of the grounds. Some viewers used binoculars, whereas others who were lazier were ensconced in their chairs, watching the live broadcast. We're third up today. It's a decent position. Relax, Master Su. Don't worry. We'll keep you updated through your earpiece, Wu Yi said. Master Su, you can warm up with the dogs right now. Even roaming around or jumping up and down will do. It will help calm nerves and prevent your muscles from stiffening. Just follow your routine and practice. We should be able to post a time of under 7 minutes. Zhuo Yu glanced at Wu Yi, then at Feng Zhao before dropping his head. Even if they managed a sub 7-minute performance, a first-place finish would likely require a time 5 minutes or less. If they didn't place first, then Feng Zhao's $10 million bet was gone. The order of appearance for the 8 teams from the 8 farms had been determined in the morning by a draw of lots. The results of the betting would be announced after the competition. After Feng Zhao placed his bet, he started monitoring betting activity on this Eastern Regional contest online. There was some discussion of the third team to appear, Dongshan Farm. Dongshan Farm. How come I haven't heard of it before? It's got 30-odd points already. Dongshan Farm is what was known as Zishan Farm. There was a change of ownership, so the name changed. Let me check who the owner is. Oh, it's a member of the Su family. And it's one of the Su kids. Who is this kid? Isn't it Suho, the kid who was caught on camera by paparazzi a while back? Now he's buying farms. I'm not worried about the farm being renamed or a change in ownership. All I care about is the dogs it's entered in the competition. I checked. Dongshan's lineup won't do. Apart from it's a dog, the others don't look promising. And there's actually a tiny puppy. Huh, were they that short on talent that they had to draft a pet dog to beef up their numbers? Many folks noticed the list of dogs that Dongshan had entered. The last one was a curly-haired dog that stood out. These experienced dog watchers could tell right away that this was not a professional shepherd dog. They scrutinized its listed weight. Wow, it's that small. There's actually a team that fielded a pet dog to boost its numbers. From a Muzhou native's perspective, a pet dog was different from a work dog. In their eyes, a pet dog was a houseplant pampered in a greenhouse. It was sissy, fragile, and served no practical purpose whatsoever, so when they spotted a small curly-haired dog on Dongshan Farm's roster, some folks completely lost interest. To be fair, Dongshan Farm's a dog isn't bad. It's a shame that, more often than not, the dog was the lead dog. That was why it was the first dog that fans paid attention to. They evaluated the entire team, its herding patterns and so on based on the strength of the dog. But Dongshan Farm's unprofessional lineup on paper disappointed many. Apart from the official betting pool, other private companies organized their own pools, but their bets were capped at 1 million. After Wu Yi placed an official bet, he bet through a private platform as well. Unlike the official pool, the private platform offered only one type of bet, first place. Different odds were listed for the 8 teams. Dongshan Farm was the least favored with the lowest odds. 5.4. That ISS to say if we place first, I'll receive 5.4 times the amount I bet. Zhuo Yu was going to enter the official pool like Feng Zhao, but when he noticed Wu Yi betting on a private platform, he switched over as well. They were only betting on themselves, might as well pick the platform with the bigger payout. Zhuo Yu bought 10,000 entries in the private pool for a total sum of $50,000. Boss, you're not going to place a heavier bet? Zhuo Yu asked casually. Lo and behold, Feng Zhao placed another 1 million. By the time betting had ended on all platforms, final preparations were underway at the competition venue. Workers inspected the pasture, a scene that was shown in the live broadcast to highlight the fact that organizers conducted a meticulous sweep. There would be no cheating. When the first team performed, Suho started jogging in circles, but the warm-up didn't alleviate his nerves, instead aggravating his anxiety. Every time he stopped, he would get antsy and check the timer obsessively. 6 minutes and 51 seconds. The first team finished with a final result of 6 minutes and 51 seconds. That's a decent time. The commentator evaluated the performance of the first team of dogs. The first team of shepherd dogs wasn't fast, but they didn't make any big mistakes. Posting a sub 7-minute time was a decent showing. At least they wouldn't finish last. By the time the second team was competing, Suho had to lead his dogs out into the field. Wu Yi followed and returned soon. He kept wiping the sweat on his forehead. He was a picture of calm just now, but this was his first competition as a contestant. While the team was named after Dongshan Farm, 6 of the dogs were from his farm. No wonder he was so nervous. By the time Wu Yi returned, the second team had completed its routine. He checked the time on the big screen, 6 minutes and 43 seconds. 2 consecutive teams posting times under 7 minutes put quite a bit of pressure on the third team. A time of 6 minutes or so wasn't stellar, but it wasn't bad either. Wu Yi was getting more and more nervous. He didn't expect his dogs to be spectacular, just as long as they could herd all the sheep into the pen. After all, it was their first contest. Who knew what could go wrong? Wu Yi rummaged through his pockets impatiently. He couldn't find anything. He was so tense when he left the farm he forgot to stuff straw in his pockets. Now he couldn't fight his jitters by chewing on a piece of straw. He glanced to his side instead. Feng Zhao, aren't you worried? I am. I couldn't tell. You seem quite calm. What are you jotting down? Tactical notes. Wu Yi approached and craned his neck, then went silent. The piece of paper was covered with scribblings that Wu Yi couldn't decipher, Fang-style musical notations. Wu Yi was about to say something when he heard Zuo Yu comment, "We're up." On the big screen, the camera paused on the instructor's podium. Su Ho was very tight. He kept on mumbling. Little Mr. Su is probably memorizing his gestures, The commentator followed with a knowing laugh. As many people know, Little Mr. Su bought was used to be Zishan Farm and renamed it Dongshan Farm. The shepherd dogs he entered aren't the ones from Zishan Farm that people know so well. These are all new faces. Oh, and there's a small pet dog on their team. Little Mr. Su doesn't seem that confident either, but that's understandable. Debutante's jitters. Okay, let's get back to the competition. The countdown has started. Let's see what kind of result this new team of dogs led by Little Mr. Su can manage. Tick, tick. The sound of the countdown clock reverberated through the field. Off we go. 100 sheep rushed into the field, and the 7 dogs emerged from passageways on their 2 flanks. Off we go. As we can see, the dogs from the third team, Dongshan Farm, have adopted a circular approach. Pay attention to how they cluster the sheep. This positioning. That's not right. Dogga doesn't seem to be in the right position. The passionate commentator became confused. Is Dongshan Farm switching tactics? Inside the closed viewing gallery, Wu Yi was watching in a pseudo-praying position. He kept repeating in his head, "Stay in position, stay in position." But Wu Yi was rudely interrupted by the menacing voice of the commentator. It's dog B is in the wrong position. It's gone down the wrong flank. It seems a bit nervous. It's probably realized its mistake and is now slowing down. Let's see how Little Mr. Su adjusts. Wu Yi slapped himself in the face. He couldn't watch anymore. Dog B. Little Lucky. Little Lucky was typically such a steady performer. It was the dog's first shepherding competition. The new surroundings were bound to take some getting used to and would lead to discomfort. But if even Little Lucky was making mistakes, the others were probably faring worse. Wu Yi might have been quite talkative under normal circumstances, but at a time like this, he was at a loss. His head was spinning. He couldn't verbalize his thoughts. He turned his head toward Feng Zhao, who had already picked up his walkie-talkie. The commentator continued, "Suho has asked to intervene. But it's a bit too late. The sheep are dispersing again. One group of sheep is peeling away from the main group. This is what happens when a dog attacks the wrong flank." The commentator was delighted by the rare sight of a sheep cluster gone astray. He sounded like he wanted to jump. "We're losing sheep. Let's see what Little Mr. Su signals to Dog B and if Dog B can return to the right position." Wait. Halfway through his spiel, Su's projection appeared not in front of Dog B but rather Dog G. Dog G. The curly-haired one. Suho made a hand gesture. He was so nervous he got it wrong initially but quickly corrected himself. Following Feng Zhao's instructions, he signaled Curly Hair to round up the sheep. When he was done, Suho didn't look very confident. Little Mr. Su's signal is to round up the sheep. Unbelievable. He actually signaled a little pet dog to lead the roundup. I think he made the wrong hand gesture. The commentator was about to elaborate when he saw Curly Hair dash like the wind. Such amazing speed. Great coverage. But it's too far from the sheep. It can't accomplish the task. Whoa, the sheep are converging. The lost sheep are returning to the fold. The commentator wiped away his sweat. It felt like he had not been able to utter a complete sentence since the third team had taken off. He had to switch gears mid-sentence every time. On the field, the small cluster of sheep that had left the main group like a wayward branch veered back toward the core group on a parabolic trajectory. Setting up a blockade. The sheep have converged. Impressive, a tiny dog actually set up the blockade for the third team. The commentator stopped using the word pet. First, to gather a flock of sheep, the sheep at the front had to be obstructed and their speed restricted. Next, the loose sheep at the sides and back had to be harried into the flock. And this process of gathering was part of herding. During that process, whether sheep or dog, all of them would be running. The flock has been gathered, remove the blockade. They are beginning to drive the flock. Running positions. Lead dog. Where is the lead dog? The commentators began searching amongst the 7 dogs. Dog A. Probably not. Dog A's running position at the start did not have the imposing manner of a lead dog. What about Dog G, who had worked hard during the crisis? Nope, Dog G's current position was at the back. Observing the few dogs on the field, the commentators then realized the dog B that had previously run to the wrong position had returned to the correct one. Generally speaking, after the flock had gathered and it was time to herd the flock, the lead dog would seek out and suppress the lead sheep. Then it would force the lead sheep to run toward the desired destination. When the lead sheep ran, the entire flock would run after it. Today was somewhat special. There was no lead dog that went to seek out the lead sheep. However, today, the flock seems to be running a little fast. Obvious suspicion could be heard in the commentator's voice. In the field, the flock was picking up speed, and the few shepherd dogs that eventually understood the situation also increased their speed. Once the gathering was complete and the running positions were correct, what followed was the herding process. As long as no unfortunate accidents happened, the sheep would be smoothly herded into the pen. The speed of the flock is still increasing. The commentator's glance at his colleague was questioning what was happening, but the look the colleague returned was one of equal bewilderment. They did not manage to catch which dog had exerted a suppressing glare. Barking. There were indeed a few dogs barking, but all of them were excited barks as they ran. They did not seem aimed at the head sheep. Scaring the sheep by biting. No one saw any dog biting. But why was the flock of sheep acting like there was something frightening chasing after them? The audiences watching the broadcast were equally puzzled. However, for those not participating, they were paying more attention to the timer. At this moment, Wuya's eyes locked onto the numbers at the top right corner of the screen. 4 minutes and 10 seconds. 4 minutes and 13 seconds. 4 minutes and 50 seconds. 5 minutes. Almost there. Persevere, my dears. Wuyi shouted. He could feel his adrenaline pumping. 5 minutes and 10 seconds. 12 seconds. 13 seconds. They are in. They are all in the pen. 5 minutes and 16 seconds. Team number 3, the Shepherd Dogs of Dongshan Farm, 5 minutes and 16 seconds. That was totally unexpected. The commentators were deeply moved. Wu Yi, who was in the viewing hall, was so stirred up that he roared with joy. He had never expected the results of his first competition would be better than his cousin's results. He had enough to brag about for an entire year already. Wu Yi wanted to share the joy with Feng Zhao but realized that Feng Zhao had retracted his gaze from the screen and continued writing and drawing in his notebook. What a wet blanket! Wu Yi thought. Turning around, he ordered a few employees who were standing beside. Faster, 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 follow me over to retrieve my little babies. On the screen, Suho had run from the instructor's platform to the pen's entrance. The instructor's platform was near the final destination, making it easy for farm owners to control their own dogs immediately. The overly excited Suho, smiling non-stop, had rushed inside and was rolling around with the 7 dogs, getting bits of grass all over his body. Looks like young Master Su is very satisfied with the results of his debut performance. The commentator's laugh was no longer the sardonic laughter from before the start of the competition but rather a merry laugh. Suho could not wipe away the smiles on his face as he brought the dogs back to the viewing hall. His original target was to only use hand gestures when necessary and let the shepherd dogs complete the herding. As for the timing, he had not even thought about it and had never expected it to be within 6 minutes. To think that it would be just a little over 5 minutes. 7 days was too short. He had only forced himself to memorize the commands and gestures. The time he spent with the 7 dogs was not nearly enough. When he had been standing on the instructor's platform, he'd still felt a little dumb. Never had he expected to get this sort of result. After you are done being happy, continue watching the competition. Is 5 minutes very little? Think about Xiaobi Farm's 4 minutes and 6 seconds. If you want to enter the Eastern Region Finals, you still have to cut down your time to below 4 minutes and 30 seconds. There is still much more training to do when you get back, Feng Zhao uttered. This was meant for not just Suho but Wu Yi as well. If Suho had been able to come up with a quick reaction when the situation occurred at the start, probably a few seconds could have been shaved off the time. This time, it was thanks to Feng Zhao's direct instructions. Otherwise, Suho really would not have known what gestures to show to Dog, Little Lucky, or the other dogs. As for Wu Yi, he needed to increase the intensity of training for some of the dogs. They could herd on their own fields however they liked. As long as the job was completed, it was fine. However, the previous standard was not good enough for the competition. They could not afford to have another error next time. Right, more training when we get back. Little Lucky, come over. Wu Yi had originally decided to slap the dog that had made a mistake. However, as his hand descended, it became a heavy pat on the head. He was in too good a mood, and as it seemed like Little Lucky had realized its own mistake already, Wu Yi could not bring himself to do so. With their team's part in today's competition done for, the excitement from the group gradually died down, and they started to watch the following teams' performances. The teams that followed mostly finished around the 6 to 7 minute mark. There was one other team that gave an extraordinary performance and managed to finish within 6 minutes, but they were slower than Dongshan Farm by 29 seconds. Once all 8 teams had finished, many people looking at the standings today were left dumbfounded. No one had expected that Dongshan would actually obtain such a result. During their run, Dongshan Farm's tactics were too hard to understand. Till now, there was still no analysis of it. After the competition, there were still people that complained, saying that there was a problem with the dogs of Dongshan Farm, especially the small curly-haired dog. There were some that said the dogs were surely doped. Toward these, Wu Yi was extremely angry. These people losing their money by betting on the wrong team are none of our goddamn business. The dogs have already undergone anti-doping tests. I am going to sue them for slander. However, as there were too many people complaining, the competition organizers dispatched a professional team over to test the dogs once more. In the end, the results were still the same. This time, no matter how many people vented their frustrations and made noise, the organizers had this to say. You may suspect others, but you cannot call into question the competition's justness and impartiality. Any complaints require evidence. Otherwise, see you in court. Having won first place for today's competition, Wu Yi was excitedly waving his hands around. Let's head back to celebrate. He was happy today. One reason was that his own farm dogs had won first place in their first ever competition. The other reason was that he had won money. He had wagered $1 million on Dongshan Farm in private. He had never expected to win it back, he had only done so to boost his own morale. Losing it was fine, he would have just taken it as a wager for memories of the first time taking part. Never had he expected that he would actually win. At 5.4 times, deducting the original $1 million, he had earned an additional $4.4 million. While Zuo Yu excitedly counted the money, he used the corner of his eyes to watch Feng Zhao. This time around, Feng Zhao had also earned quite a large sum, but till now, his attention was not on the money but on his notebook. Boss, are you not going to share your thoughts? Zuo Yu asked. Thoughts? Feng Zhao raised his head. We are heading to Qingqing tomorrow. What are we going there for? Wu Yi and Suho were curious as well. Have you heard of Qingqing's Odd Music Company? Odd Music Company? Nope. Wu Yi shook his head repeatedly. I might have heard of it somewhere but I don't remember what they do. Having grown up in Qingqing, Suho only felt that this company's name sounded a little familiar, but he was unclear about anything else. Odd Music Company is a company that provides recording studios. Other than a few big entertainment companies and music academies, their company's recording studios are highly rated. I made a reservation just now. I will check it out tomorrow, Feng Zhao said. Music recording. Are there a lot of people? Suho did not understand. There will be a queue. Seems like Mazao's musical ambience is not too bad. Ever since coming to Mazao, he had listened to quite a number of the native Mazao songs. At Shanmu Farm, he had also heard Wu Yi playing his bamboo flute. Not just native Mazao music, when Feng Zhao had made a reservation for a symphony recording studio, he had realized that this style of music was also rather popular and he would be required to queue. Tomorrow, when he went down, he did not even know if he could start recording. Then what about Curly Hair? Now, Suho felt that among the 7 dogs, Curly Hair was the most reliable. If Feng Zhao went to Qingqing, would he bring Curly Hair along? Curly Hair will stay and train with you. Stop thinking about relying on him all the time. I heard that the difficulty will be increased for the finals. Just relying on one dog will not do, Feng Zhao replied. Hee, got it. Suho felt that the dreams he had every day about the finals now had a chance of becoming reality. The party brought the dogs back to Shanmu Farm. Currently, they were still living on Shanmu Farm. Feng Zhao used a long-range video projection to check on the situation at Dongshan Farm. He found out that the renovation work he had requested was already complete and new grass had already been grown. Crops for the current season would be sowed on the fields and would germinate in a bit. After arranging everything, the next day, Feng Zhao headed for Qingqing with Zuo Yu in tow. Odd Music Company's building was shaped like an erected flute, tall and cylindrical, and had many windows that were made circular. Feng Zhao had made a reservation for their symphony recording studio. When they arrived, there was a private studio that were doing their recording. The forecasted time was in a short while, so Feng Zhao waited in the building's waiting hall. There were a few others who were waiting just like him. Feng Zhao saw a few youngsters holding on to a book engaged in discussion. Feng Zhao was very familiar with the cover. It was the book he had written with Shui Jing, New Voices in Symphonic Composition. The paperback and electronic versions of New Voices in Symphonic Composition had been published worldwide. Shui Jing had mentioned to Feng Zhao that sales of the electronic book were great and that the paperbacks required additional reprints, as the reviews were good. At a table behind Feng Zhao, a student raised his head to look at the people in his surroundings and whispered to his companion, "Nowadays, the people doing symphonic styles have increased. In the past, the symphonic recording studio was always empty, and at times, they would lend it out to other styles of music. Never did I expect that we would have to queue despite booking a day in advance. Seems like it started when New Voices in Symphonic Composition came out. A classmate in an orchestra told me that, every day, he is busy from morning till night. Previously, the amount of idle time made him consider changing professions and he felt that there were no prospects for him. Now he is crazy busy, but he laughs when he dreams. You know, now that their orchestra is gaining popularity and their charges have doubled, surprisingly, they are still that busy." Like and subscribe.